everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Vikings Mail Call. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, and as always, I'm joined by Minnesota Vikings game day radio color analyst Pete Bercich. Well, Pete, it's been pretty quiet out at Winter Park this week, hasn't it?
Anything but. We seem to have the market cornered on controversy, don't we?
Well, I wish I'd invested in media, trucks, and cables, because I'd be really rolling in the dough right now.
You would be. We all would be. I mean, you kind of have to roll with it, and unfortunately, it is what it is. And part of the thing I've been saying for the week is, there's still 52, 53 guys that have to get ready for a game. There's still a game on Sunday, and it's not going to be an easy one.
No doubt. Well, it's never a dull moment out at Viking land, and it's today the Vikings released wide receiver Jerome Simpson after it was reported that he was cited for marijuana possession on July 7th. And I have really two questions for you on that one, Pete. First, why does a guy like Simpson get so many chances, and with nearly $1 million of annual salary on the line, why can't he stay out of trouble? And then secondly, why would something that happened over 2 months ago just become known to the team today?
Those are all good questions. The only explanation I have for him not being able to stay off those kinds of things is there has to be an addiction there somewhere. I mean, anybody, I think, in their right mind would absolutely stay away from those things if they kept them between, a good paying job and where he is. And he's had multiple offenses, so there's more to it than that. And he's going to have to take this opportunity. Unfortunately, he's unemployed right now, but he has to take some time here and figure things out. Because the next team that gives him a chance, they're going to, give him minimum salary and give him, a very, very short leash, if you will, because you just can't continue to do that kind of thing. It's always been interesting. I know guys, have a tendency to get in trouble, but once they get caught, I mean, you don't have to look any further than Jared Allen to see a guy who really turned his life around and really turned things around. I'm not with him every day, so I don't know if he's completely, straight and narrow, but he's kept himself out of trouble. He was a big risk when we made the trade for him.
Yep.
And there's a story that worked out. So for every Jerome Simpson, there's a Jared Allen.
And are you surprised that the team didn't know about this?
I don't know. I think that they may have known, but until it's made public or made official, they can't act on it, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, to sit here and say that what's happened with Adrian and what's happened with Ray Rice and everything else that's going on in the league, that it didn't affect it, I think you'd be a little naive. I think the decision was made to do that, based on some of the other things that were going on.
Yeah, well, you talk about Adrian Peterson. Obviously, things have changed a little bit a couple of times in the last week, but Wednesday, the Wilfs and Rick Spielman came out and said they got it right. And I'm curious, from your perspective, did they get it right, and do you believe the outcome is really the fairest thing for Peterson, the team, and the fans?
It's a tough question. I think, you look at the league now, and you look at what's happened in this day and age of video and TMZ and everything else. Once these photos get leaked and are made public, it's the court of public opinion that matters now. I mean, you look at Ray Rice, and he wasn't even prosecuted by the attorney, but as soon as the video was made public, he was gone. Mm-hmm. And same thing for Adrian Peterson. That the photos of his son were leaked out, and people took one look at those photos and said, I don't care what he says or what happened. He's guilty of child abuse. And once Radisson jumped on board and Bush came up and said a few things, and I mean, in instances like this, there's a lot of outrage, and people have made that known, and they're speaking with their money and their what they're going to buy and what they're going to support, and that affects the league. It's one way that affects the league, and unfortunately, the Vikings made a decision and then they changed it, which I think I know they said they wanted to get it right 1 million times in the press conference, but it's something I think they had to do, and the pressure was just too great to do anything else. The problem is this sets a dangerous precedent in that you've got one guy who was accused of a crime, and then you have another guy who wasn't, and their fate is the same. So what happens going forward? You're going to start just suspending people immediately for being accused of crimes, and that, I think, is very dangerous, because there are a lot of cases where people can get accused of things and there's really nothing there. So they're walking a fine line right now.
Yeah, well, it's obviously been a really disruptive week for the Vikings, but I know you've seen this before because you were the Vikings linebacker coach in 2005 when the big Love Boat scandal story broke. And in that situation, with all the media frenzy that we saw there, how did that affect players and coaches' concentration and focus for the games ahead?
As a coach, you walk in, you go inside the door, and that's it. I mean, you don't look outside, you don't go outside anyway. You don't even know if it's raining or if the sun's out. You know what I mean? So it doesn't affect the work that has to be done. As far as the players go, sometimes distractions can be healthy. Because people are going to ask you about certain situations instead about the game. But you take a look at how they played and performed against the Patriots. You're out there, you have a punt return, you have 9 guys on the field. You get a field goal block for a touchdown. The turnovers, I mean, they were not on their game at all on Sunday against the Patriots. So whatever the problem was it the distraction of AP? I don't know. I mean, what I have seen though, and what has been my experience is it's so hard to win in the NFL that teams sometimes, when they're given an excuse to lose, will lose. I remember Cleveland back, and believe it was in 96 or 95 when they were leaving to go to Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And Bill Belichick was a head coach, and they had made the playoffs the year before, and then all of a sudden ownership announces they're moving to Baltimore, and everything just kind of folded up. And we played them, I think, late in the season, and we knew that these guys, their hearts weren't in it, and that they were getting caught up in what was going on. And so it's an unfortunate turn of events. But the key is for the coaching staff and for Mike Zimmer to not let this be an excuse, to not let the players, sit around and say, woe is me, woe is us, because we're missing our best offensive threat. Somebody else is going to step up and make some plays, and that's when leadership needs to take over. And so we'll see on Sunday who steps up.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that 95 Cleveland game, but be honest, Pete, the reason you really remember is because you lit somebody up on a kickoff return, right?
Oh my God, what don't you know?
And here's the kickoff. Taken on the run by McCardle. Oh, and that's the end of the run. Whoa. 9 yards, Pete Bercich makes a statement.
Just a clean rundown there by Bercich. Trying to get something going, McCardle, but nobody even breathes on this guy as he gets downfield. And that's the kind of Yahoo crazy stuff you need out of your special teams, especially when you're in a playoff run.
Well, you mentioned New England, and you mentioned, we get back to the team on the field. I mean, we look really anemic, especially on offense. And, now with Peterson out, likely for the entire 2014 season, what ammunition is really still back there in the backfield for us?
Well, that's kind of the problem. I mean, you've gotten some juice out of Cordero when he lines up, back there. But you can't, you're not going to give him a steady diet of that. So, what are you going to do? It is what it is. I mean, you got Jerick McKinnon as a rookie. You have to find a way to get him involved in the offense. Matt Asiata is a good running back, and he'll get you 4 or 5 yards. I mean, he's not going to take it to the second level and do those kinds of things like Adrian can. But, it is what it is. And North Turner is going to have to dig deep and try to figure out what he can do. I would think that without the threat of a big running game, he'd want to spread teams out a little bit more, go to a quick, more of a possession-type passing game. That way that you're not going to get, because the play action isn't going to be what it used to be. So they're going to have to evolve some way on offense to be productive.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned McKinnon, and I saw a little bit of him in camp. I know you've seen him a little bit, in preseason. Does he have the size to be a feature back, and how dynamic is he? What do you see?
Well, from the beginning, I've kind of seen him as a possible third down guy. And talking to the coaching staff, they say he's very smart, very tough, so he could do pass protection. If he can learn the pass protection, because it's a pretty complicated thing for a running back to learn the protections and the checks and be able to do all those things. And then as a threat as a receiver out of the backfield. I mean, he's explosive. He can do those. He can run behind an offensive line, and he has that patience. And we saw a lot of power running game in the preseason, which really disappeared over the last couple of weeks. So maybe we might start seeing more of that. And the power running game, double teaming at the point and trying to kick out the outside defender and finding a crease up inside. So with Alziata and with Jarrett, they may try to go back to that style of running game to just pound the ball. I think that's maybe the only thing left to do.
Yeah. Have you put a call into Robert Smith to see if he's in shape?
Robert's in shape, but he's not. He's done. Trust me. I talked to Robert not too long ago. You miss. I always look back to the '90s when I was playing, and the amount of offensive firepower we had. It was a great time, and I was very fortunate to be a Viking, during those years, and we won a lot of football games. I mean, I was lucky to play 7 years in the NFL and never have a losing season. To make the playoffs 6 out of 7 years, to play in 2 NFC Championship games. I mean, we had a lot of success, and I think Viking fans want to get back to that. They want to get back to that so badly, but with the way things are right now, that may take a little bit more time.
Well, as we look at the quarterback position, there's no other way to say it. Matt Castle had a really rough day with 4 interceptions. And when you look at his performance, what went wrong? Was he staring down too many receivers, or was he holding the ball too long, or maybe he was making the wrong decisions?
Well, I think one thing that New England did do was be physical with him. He hung in there tough and took a few pretty big hits early on. And later on in the game, he started hurrying some throws. I mean, the first interception was a deep ball, very similar to the one I was intercepted against Carolina last year. And you're out there in the elements and the wind, and for that ball to hang up there long enough for the backside safety to come over to make that interception and then return it to the 1 yard line. I mean, that's tough. So later on, there was some miscommunication between him and the receivers, and maybe some telegraphing going on, but it was all a factor of, I think, him getting hit a lot early, and then it kind of getting to him later in the game.
Yeah, well, one of the things I noticed when I looked a little bit of the coach's film is it seemed like the receivers at times were struggling to get off the line of scrimmage. How can they remedy that?
Well, one of those, you can do that formationally, and what we've seen out of North Turner a lot is a lineup, they shift and then they motion. And so for a guy like Cordero Patterson, who plays the off-the-line receiver, or what we call the Z, you got to keep him moving. And you got to keep these receivers in motion. You got to keep them moving around, and that'll keep the defenders from being able just to tee off on them at the line of scrimmage. There's technique and things involved, but Greg Jennings is going to be more of a target because he doesn't move as much. He lines up as an X most of the time, and once he's on the line of scrimmage, he can't move. But he's done this for many years, and that's one of his specialties. So, we'll see. And, again, these are the things you got to get better at week after week. But if you're not putting the right amount of guys on the field and you're getting field goal attempts blocked,
right,
getting off on the receivers is down the list. They have some really basic things that they have to fix and fix quickly.
Yeah, you mentioned Greg Jennings, and on one of Castle's interceptions, it really appeared that Jennings stopped running his route, which allowed that easy pick by Darrelle Revis. And what type of feedback from a Norv Turner would Castle and Jennings likely have gotten in the film room session on that play?
Well, I don't think it would have been pretty. I think that would have been posed as to what exactly happened here and what were you expecting. And so these are the kinds of things when you see guys that happening, and like again with everything else, just a subpar effort, period, across the board by the team. And, you and to do it at home is the other thing too that's disappointing. So we'll see. I mean, they'll turn it around. I'm sure that Coach Zimmer has been in their face and been all over them all week. And if they play the same way this weekend in New Orleans, where, when New Orleans last year averaged 34 points a game at home, it can get embarrassing. Now, defensively, we didn't do too badly, I don't think. Granted that the Patriots pulled back a little bit because they were up, but Harrison Smith continues to make big plays when you need them. And so when you're giving up touchdown on a field goal block and you have a 1st and 1 at the 1, that's 14 points right there. So, the defense, I think, is one group that's trending upwards still, and hopefully that'll continue.
Sure. Well, we know at some point in time, Teddy Bridgewater, he's the future of the team at quarterback. But even with that uneven day with Castle last Sunday, if he doesn't pick his game up, do you think Mike Zimmer and Norv Turner have enough confidence in Bridgewater at this point to make the switch?
Right now, I don't think so. And one thing that I can't stand, and we've been through it, with Christian Ponder and with everything else and the quarterback bit, That I am not looking forward to. I think that they need to give Castle some time here. Even if things don't go well down in New Orleans, you're 1-2. You have 2 divisional games coming up between the Lions and the Packers, and you also play an NFC opponent in Atlanta. So let the guy do his thing. Let the guy try to win this thing out, or at least turn things around. Give him a couple weeks. I hope they don't pull the plug on him too quickly.
Okay. And obviously it wasn't all quarterback problems. As Matt Khalil continues to struggle in pass protection, what can be done to stop that dramatic free fall in production and performance we're seeing? And at some point, could he be benched for an unproven player?
Well, in a case like that, that's very difficult to do. Just because you've invested so much in him, normally you wouldn't want to even think about replacing him unless you had an injury. Mm-hmm. But that's a big question mark. I mean, the way things have gone, you would think that he kind of got through, had a rough sophomore year, and he's turned things around. I mean, I don't know. And the other thing that's difficult is that he's talented enough to play at a very high level. I mean, his rookie year, he was down the field making blocks, blocking to the whistle, doing those things, and we haven't seen it out of him as much. And so something isn't right. And whether it's between the ears or whether it's something off the field, I don't know. I have no idea. But something isn't right with him right now, and that needs, like you said, that needs to get fixed. But can he turn it around? Absolutely.
Well, you talked about the defense, and it was relatively a bright spot when they were playing on a short field a lot of times. But one of the things I wondered about was the defensive line, and they looked like they were having a lot of trouble getting any sort of pressure on Tom Brady last week. What was the problem that you saw, if anything, and what adjustments do you think they need to make to get a more consistent pass rush on Drew Brees to disrupt him on Sunday?
Well, part of the problem, with a guy like Brady is that to get pressure on him, he sees it, knows it. I mean, one of the touchdowns that they scored, the fade in the corner of the end zone, that was an all-out blitz, and Brady knew it was coming. Wide receivers ran their route. He put the ball right where it needed to be. So you have to be very careful with a guy like him. Now, same thing with Drew Brees, is that if he sees, he's smart, he's cagey, he knows if it's coming. So blitzing to get pressure on the quarterback isn't always the answer, especially when you have, a wide receiver core like New Orleans has. So there's a lot of talent out there. So one of the things that you can do, Brees is only about 6 foot tall. You need to keep him in the pocket, and you need to collapse the pocket on him. You can't just rush freely up the field and give him a big, huge throwing lane, because he'll kill you with it. Mm-hmm. You got to get him uncomfortable in the pocket. So sometimes when a quarterback gets rid of the ball so quickly, you can't even get there if you're unblocked. And so they need to just center up and close the pocket, keep him in there, and make him feel uncomfortable. Don't give him any throwing lanes. And knowing that when the Saints take their shots deep, it's usually off play action. And I've said it before, is that when Drew Brees turns his back on the defense, that's when you got to hold your breath, because that's when they take their deep shots. They keep their play action keeps 7 guys in for protection, lets Brees turn around and just heave the ball deep. But if he's going play action and throwing checkdowns, that means we're taking care of business deep. And trust me, the Saints are going to try to put 100 up on us. I mean, they are, I'm sure, chomping at the bit, and they're going to want to be explosive early to get the crowd in it, to make sure that all the doubters are silenced and that people get moving. So this first quarter of this game, could be trick plays. It could be a lot of different things that the Saints feel that they need to get out ahead of the Vikings.
And you talk about what the Saints need, besides the defensive line making sure they keep him in the pocket, they collapse the pocket. What are the other things they have to do to try to steal a win down in New Orleans?
Well, that's going to be a tough thing. The tight end position is a bit of concern. I know that Chad Greenway has a broken bone in his wrist. What he's going to do and how he's going to be for the game is going to be interesting. And then they have the regular cast of characters of Colston and the rest of the crew, but they've got this Brandon Cooks, this rookie, who's about 5'8", 190 pounds, soaking wet, and he's a little dynamo. He's quick. He's small. He's the kind of receiver that really, like last week, Xavier Rhodes had a lot of problems with Amendola dealing with the smaller, shiftier style of wide receiver, and he'll figure it out. I don't think there's any concern about that. He'll figure that out. Mm-hmm. But when you're a bigger guy and you're giving up some of the quickness, you're covering receivers that are a lot smaller than you are. It's a whole other world, and it's hard to be on an island and cover these guys. So, we saw it's a copycat league. So things that the Vikings had problems with last week, you're going to see again. And trust me, that Xavier Rhodes is going to see a lot of this Brandon Cooks kid. Trust me.
And, when you look at it from the passing game, I'm expecting, we didn't see much of it last week. How are they going to get Greg Jennings more involved this week?
That's a good question. And I think he comes and goes. He's obviously a big red zone threat. But Kyle Rudolph has disappeared. A lot of these guys that we saw a little bit of in the preseason have really disappeared. And, we're only 2 games into this, so we'll see. But, yeah, they're going to have to get everybody involved. Everyone. Spread that ball around and get it to as many people as they can, because I don't think there's one guy out there who can carry this team on his shoulders the way Adrian can. And you may need 2 or 3 people to replace his productivity.
Yeah, and you mentioned Chad Greenway. I mean, I can get it for a defensive lineman where they might be able to make it through a game with a broken hand or wrist, but you were a linebacker. How can Chad Greenway play with that and actually tackle and wrap up?
Well, that's something you may have to sacrifice, and what's going to depend upon is how much that they have to cast him up. If you put anything hard or a solid cast down, then you have to wrap it, with something soft. So he may be a little limited when it comes to wrapping up and tackling. But they could just go with one of the younger guys and just let him get healthy. I don't know. We'll see. But I think what the main thing is going to be how far they have to go to protect it. Because if the cast is too big and too bulky, then he may not be able to play. But if it's a situation where they don't have to, immobilize it, I don't believe there's any pins or anything in there. I think he'll be okay.
Now, Pete, all good things have to come to an end, and we've already reached the end of our weekly mail call show. And this week I want to tell people about something a little bit different. Pete's got a weekly show called The Film Room. It's on Fridays with his broadcast partner, Paul Allen, over on Vikings.com. And it's really a great 5-minute segment where Pete uses his playing and coaching experience, and he breaks down game film to diagnose just a couple of plays each week from a previous Viking game. And at least for me, it really helps the novice understand the game better. And for the hardcore fans out there, he takes you into the trenches and gives you a little bit of coach speak. So I encourage you, don't miss that. And until next week, for Pete Bercich, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.